The MMA world is terrified right now, and it's not because Khabib is coming back. A legendary fighter just suffered his 8th straight loss. Fans are begging him to retire, and Khabib finally broke his silence with a shocking message that nobody expected. And to understand why this moment shook the MMA world, we need to start from the beginning. So let's rewind to October 24th, 2020 at UFC 254 in Abu Dhabi. The world was still dealing with lockdowns, no packed arenas, no roaring fans, just a silent Fight Island setup where every punch echoed louder than usual. That night, Khabib Nurmagomedov stepped into the cage for what no one realized at the time would be his last fight. Across from him was Justin Gaethje, one of the most dangerous strikers in the lightweight division. Everyone expected a war, but Khabib had something else in mind. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to make a statement. And in round 2, he did exactly that. After taking Gaethje down, Khabib smoothly transitioned into a triangle choke. Within seconds, Gaethje tapped. The fight was over. Just like that, Khabib was 29-0. But here's what hit harder than the choke: the retirement speech. Minutes after the fight, Khabib took the mic, placed his gloves on the canvas, and said he was done. His father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, had passed away a few months earlier due to COVID-related complications. Abdulmanap wasn't just his father, he was his lifelong coach, mentor, and guide. Without him, Khabib said he couldn't continue. What shocked fans even more was when Khabib revealed a promise he had made to his mother. She didn't want him fighting without his father by his side, so Khabib gave her his word that Justin Gaethje would be his last opponent. He said, "I promised my mother, this is my last fight." Even after UFC 254, when Khabib placed his gloves in the middle of the octagon and said he was done, fans just didn't believe it. Why? Because walking away at 29-0 is almost unheard of. Most fighters lose before retiring. Khabib was still at his absolute peak, and people couldn't wrap their heads around him quitting while being the most dominant lightweight in history. One big reason people kept dreaming of his comeback was the story of unfinished business. For years, fans were obsessed with the matchup between Khabib and Tony Ferguson. They were booked to fight 5 times, and each time something insane happened. Injuries, weight cut issues, even the pandemic. Because that fight never happened, many people felt Khabib's career was missing one final chapter. It became one of the biggest what-ifs in MMA history. Then came social media. Anytime a fighter in the lightweight division had a big win, fans flooded Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube with comments like, "What if Khabib comes back for one more?" Even fighters themselves started calling him out, knowing that mentioning his name guaranteed headlines. Super fights like Khabib versus Conor 2, Khabib versus Oliveira, or even fantasy matchups with welterweights like GSP kept the speculation alive. What made things worse was Khabib never completely disappeared from the scene. He was always cage-side coaching Islam Makhachev, Umar Nurmagomedov, or other teammates. Every time the camera showed him, fans couldn't help but imagine, what if he still fought? To many, he still looked fit, strong, and ready. Even UFC president Dana White kept the fire alive. He admitted multiple times that he tried to convince Khabib to fight again, offering mega money paydays and dream fights. Fast forward to July 27th, 2025, Khabib appeared on the Hustle Show podcast, and for the first time in years, he spoke clearly about why a comeback just isn't possible. His words crushed the last bit of hope fans were holding on to. He explained that people think fighters can just jump back in after a couple of months of training. But that's not how it works. 2 or 3 months wouldn't be enough, he said. "I'll be 37 in September. To prepare for a fight, you need at least 6 months of full focus, no distractions." Khabib broke it down in a way casual fans rarely hear. Being fit isn't the same as being fight-ready. He said lifting weights or running miles doesn't prepare you for the octagon. What really matters is sparring, doing hundreds of rounds with high-level training partners. That's what sharpens timing, reflexes, and fight IQ. Without that, you're just another athlete, not a fighter. He also pointed out how brutal those 6 months of training camps are. When he was active, his life revolved around training. 6 days a week, mornings and evenings spent on the mat, strict diet, no travel, no distractions. He lived like a soldier preparing for battle. Now, as a coach, he has business meetings, travel commitments, and family life. Returning to that hardcore lifestyle, he admitted, is not realistic anymore. Another key detail from the interview was his mental state. Khabib said fighting is not just physical, it's emotional. Back then, he fought with fire, with a clear goal. Now, his goals are different. He wants to build champions, not be one again. Even though Khabib retired, his presence in MMA didn't disappear. Instead, it evolved. He moved from fighter to coach, and in just a few years, his impact has been massive. The most obvious example is Islam Makhachev. Once seen as Khabib's protege, Islam has now become the UFC lightweight champion himself. With Khabib in his corner, Islam's wrestling and control look almost identical to what Khabib used to do. Fans often say it feels like Khabib never left the cage, he just fights through Islam now. But it's not just Islam.
He's undefeated, dangerous, and people are already predicting he'll be champion soon. Then there's Usman Nurmagomedov, who fights in Bellator. He's already holding titles there, proving that Khabib's influence isn't limited to just the UFC. What makes Khabib a special coach is how hands-on he is. He doesn't just give instructions from the corner. He trains with his fighters, wrestles with them, pushes them to the limit. Fighters have said Khabib is tougher in practice than most of their actual opponents. That level of intensity builds champions. But it's not only physical training. Khabib also shapes their mindset. He constantly reminds them to stay disciplined, stay humble, and focus on faith. When you listen to Islam or Umar in interviews, they often repeat the same values Khabib lives by: hard work, respect, and patience. That's proof of how much influence he has on them.
Sounding like if you have them, then late, donate feels calm. One donate.
While Khabib has transitioned smoothly into coaching, not every fighter has been able to walk away. The clearest example is Tony Ferguson. At UFC 311, Tony faced Michael Chiesa, and what happened was painful for fans to watch. Chiesa submitted him in the very first round, handing Ferguson his 8th straight loss. That's now the longest losing streak in UFC lightweight history. For years, Ferguson was known as El Cucuy, the boogeyman of the division. He had an insane 12-fight win streak, finishing guys with elbows, submissions, and wild brawls. He was unpredictable, unbreakable, and fighters feared him. But now, that same man is struggling to survive in the cage. The loss to Chiesa wasn't just another defeat. It was a symbol of decline. Ferguson looked slower. His reactions weren't sharp, and his defense was fading. Fans who grew up watching his wars against guys like Anthony Pettis and Donald Cerrone were heartbroken. Seeing their hero become a stepping stone for younger fighters felt wrong. The MMA community reacted instantly. Social media blew up with one major message: Tony should retire. People were concerned not just about his record, but about his health. Getting hit that many times, taking that much damage, long-term, it's dangerous. Even Khabib, his old rival, showed respect and said Ferguson deserves to enjoy life after fighting. For years, Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson were considered bitter rivals. Fans wanted them to fight so badly that the UFC booked the matchup 5 times. And every time, something crazy stopped it. Because of that, most people expected Khabib to celebrate when Tony started losing. But after Ferguson's latest defeat at UFC 311, Khabib's response shocked everyone. Instead of trash talk, Khabib showed something rare in combat sports: pure respect.
Ever compete in the UFC.
Even more powerful was what Khabib said about life after fighting. He told Ferguson that being 40 years old doesn't mean the end, it means a new beginning. Khabib said, his life is just beginning because he just finished his MMA career. Now it is going to be a much better life. Imagine hearing that from the man you were supposed to fight
for years. It was like closing a chapter with respect instead of bitterness. This moment showed Khabib's maturity. Years ago, he was known for his intensity and fiery words, especially in feuds with fighters like Conor McGregor. But now, he's different. He's older, wiser, and views the sport from a coaching perspective. He sees fighters not just as opponents, but as humans who give everything inside the cage. Fighters like Tony take huge amounts of damage over their careers. Knockouts, concussions, constant head strikes, it all adds up. Doctors warn about CTE, a brain condition caused by repeated head trauma. Once it sets in, it can lead to memory loss, depression, and even personality changes. That's why fans panic when they see older fighters still taking punishment. Another reason the MMA world is scared is late retirements. Too many fighters push their careers beyond the point of safety, either for money, pride, or because they simply can't let go. The UFC often still books them because fans will pay to watch, but the results are painful to see. Slower reactions, fragile chins, and one-sided beatdowns. UFC 311 was more than just another pay-per-view. It was basically a showcase of Khabib's new dynasty. Even though he's retired, his fingerprints were all over the event. 3 of his closest teammates and brothers-in-arms were fighting that night, and it felt like Khabib was leading an army into battle. The night started with Tagir Ulanbekov in the early prelims. He's not as famous as the other Nurmagomedovs, yet, but hardcore fans know he's dangerous. Tagir is a technical flyweight with slick grappling, and under Khabib's guidance, he's been quietly climbing the rankings. Having him open the card showed that Khabib's influence spreads across multiple divisions, not just lightweight. Later in the night, the spotlight shifted to Umar Nurmagomedov. As Khabib's cousin, Umar carries the family name proudly, and many believe he's the future bantamweight champion. His fight at UFC 311 wasn't just another match. It was a main event, proof of how fast he's risen. Umar's speed, precision, and calmness in the cage reminded fans of Khabib's discipline, but with his own unique striking style. And then, of course, came the biggest moment. Islam Makhachev defending his lightweight belt. Islam isn't just Khabib's protege. He's proof that Khabib's coaching really works. Before the event,
Or for him, it wasn't about money or fame, it was about brotherhood. One of the biggest what-ifs in MMA history is the rivalry between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson. On paper, it was perfect. Khabib, the unstoppable grappler, versus Ferguson, the unorthodox striker with endless cardio. Fans wanted it, fighters wanted it, and the UFC tried 5 different times to make it happen. But somehow, it never came to life. The first cancellation happened in 2015. Khabib injured his rib in training, and the fight was scrapped. In 2016, it was Ferguson's turn. He pulled out due to health issues. In 2017, the fight was back on, this time for an interim title. But Khabib had weight-cutting problems so severe, he was hospitalized. Then in 2018, the rivalry took a weird turn. Just days before the fight, Ferguson tripped over a cable at a media event and tore a ligament in his knee. It was one of the strangest injuries in UFC history. The 5th and final attempt came in 2020. Everything was set. Khabib versus Tony, finally. But then COVID-19 hit. Travel restrictions came into play, and Khabib was stuck in Russia. The UFC went ahead with an interim fight, and Ferguson fought Justin Gaethje instead. That night ended with Ferguson taking a brutal beating, and the dream of Khabib versus Ferguson officially died. Fans started calling it the cursed fight. No matter how many times they tried, something always went wrong. Injuries, bad luck, and even a global pandemic. All of it combined to make sure Khabib and Tony never touched gloves. Looking back, this rivalry has become legendary. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't happen. People still argue about who would have won in their primes. Some say Khabib's wrestling would have been too much. Others believe Tony's insane pace and elbows could have caused problems. But we'll never know. After retiring, most fighters eventually try something lighter.
like grappling matches, exhibition bouts, or charity fights. Many fans thought Khabib might do the same. And subscribe for more deep dives into combat sports.